Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster. We are continuing to work on Alpine Odyssey, and today we get to try and establish the look for the garage. And there's going to be multiple garage, so there's going to be a couple episodes of doing this, maybe two, if I can get the theme kind of established quick enough. But due to us starting over, I do have a good idea of kind of what we're going for, and I'm able to kind of just assemble the tile set much quicker than before. So we're using the rough concrete as a base structure. We're using some of the kind of cobblestone as a detail and some red brick, and we are bringing in the blue from the toll booth area into the structure as well, just so they match up. I wanted to possibly get some large fence work here along the interior, make it feel very safe and kind of closed in. However, I just thought it just looked a little janky, and because we're going to actually have things on the inside, I want to maybe open it up, allow the people to see through the gaps a little bit easier. And plus, parking garages generally don't have much to them in terms of fencing on the inside. They might have a railing, of course, so people just don't trip and fall out, but most of the time it's just a pretty open slab of concrete. So we're gonna go with a nice off blue floor as well, very similar to what we did before, and I am copying and pasting it around, making sure things make sense, and then laying out the base shapes for the structure. Now there's going to be a pretty big skip at some point, and it's going to be a little jarring because what happened was I thought I was recording and I wasn't. So this was going to be a longer episode, and if you guys have been at the last live stream, you would see kind of the progress that we made previously, but oh well, that's just kind of lost footage at this point. But we're going to preemptively make a staircase attachment for the actual sides of the buildings, and each garage is going to end up having two staircases, and they will be relatively uniform, detailed, with some wooden kind of levels throughout. They're also going to use some wooden staircase elements as well on there, and they're going to have the same guardrail elements as before, very much like our previous garage that we have made. And to get this right, it's a kind of a little bit of trial and error, because you are making a tile set that goes vertically, which is a little bit more interesting, especially since you're making a whole room, and you have to try and make sure the staircase lines up from the top to the bottom every time you copy this thing on top of itself, and it can be a little challenging. Initially, I wanted to have these wooden staircase elements that were a little bit more of a traditional kind of shape, so you get the overhang and a little bit of a better footer, and just overall more spread out. However, I just didn't like how wide these planks were. I wish there was a 2-meter version of the wooden plank, because I think that would be very beneficial for our overall asset kind of management that we have. If we had a 2-meter, 4-meter, and what is it, 2, 4, 6? No, that's not what I'm thinking. Okay, sorry, it is 1 in the morning. I'm a little tired. I need a 1-meter, I need a 2-meter, and I need a 4-meter piece of pretty much everything that we currently have in the game. And at that point, I'll be pretty happy with the variety that we're going to be able to maintain. At this point, the garage is built up, and a lot of this stuff kind of detailing out a lot of the line work that was done during last week's live stream, but the base of the building was kind of done off camera there. And we also built an elevator shaft on the live stream, and I think that turned out really well. I can show you a little bit more in detail here during the real-time section. But right now, what we're going to be working on are some awnings and coverings, kind of these shade elements on top of the garage, and that's going to provide a nice way to keep the cars a little bit more cool on top. I mean, granted, we are in the Alpine theme set, so it doesn't quite make sense to have these things. This is something that you might see a little bit more in the desert, say like Arizona, Phoenix, something like that. But I just think the roof element looks cool, and you know, this isn't a functional building anyways, so no sense going super realistic with it. Might as well just make it 100% all about that roll of cool. And we'll add some gates here at the beginning, a little bit of a round element, so it looks like they can actually roll up and down. We're going to complete the handicap symbol by using some custom shapes here, and it's tough to kind of get the scale at this point. You know, you can use the tops of the half circle bit as a little bit of a pixel like element, and you can kind of make rudimentary shapes. Now it's going to have those little squares and a little bit of a shadow to it, but from afar I think it does its job nicely, and really there's not a piece small enough that we can use that wouldn't stick through the bottom of the floor, because we're going to need possibly some of these handicap spots on upper levels, and that's just to make sure everything's accessible in the long run. So these handicap squares here, they are going to be spaced out, and this space is fairly common, at least here in America, and this extra width that they give handicap spaces is to allow wheelchairs to get in towards their vehicles a lot more easily. It allows people to have plenty of room to get in and out of the vehicle as well, with or without a wheelchair, just so they're a little bit more comfortable than, say, they would have been without that. The normal parking spaces, you know, they feel a little plain at the moment, so we're going to copy and paste the awning from the roof and bring it down to the floor element. This is going to create some vertical play, and that's going to be a nice kind of addition to the overall theme set. We're just finishing up this one garage on the right here this episode, and during the real-time section I do want to go over some potential plans for the future, because depending on how well you guys receive this and also what I have planned down the line, we might still be early enough to adjust a few things. Trying to get some center lines drawn here just between the gaps, so people, you know, make sure they line up to the correct doorway, the in and exit point. And it's a nice simple line, and then you just rotate the end just a little bit. We're also going to be coloring a lot of these areas more of a yellowish gold, and that's just to make sure they are different from parking spaces and to really ensure that they stand out so people aren't as tempted to park there. And also on the interior, you can see some of them, but there are marked pathways so people can't park in between like pillars, and the pedestrians can be sure to be safe as they walk towards the elevator there on the inside. Each floor going to need its own set of lights, and at nighttime this whole thing is very bright and very well lit, and I think it just turned out really well. I learned a lot from the first kind of series, and we're going to add numbering, some a little bit better numbering I think than before. This nice square solid piece looks like it can sink in a good amount. It's very bright, kind of easy to read. I've noticed a lot of these texts that they have in the game are a little pixelated depending on what sign you're using, and it can be bothersome to look at, so it's tough to find the sign that you want and can keep the font at a good size so it's eligible from far away. Now at the lower point, I wouldn't mind adding some speed limit signs. I wish there were some more additional signs like exit signs, or possibly some do not enter signs for traffic. But I know these speed limit signs and things were added more for the go-kart, not so much for people building parking lots like we are here in Alpine Odyssey, but it is what it is. So we're going to have a nice flower bed and slight tree placement here along the edge, and that's one to cover up a little bit of the natural edge of the pathing tool, but also I just wanted this curved element, and it does break up on the left side there a little bit, and that's because there's going to be an access point to the bus station, and so you need people to be able to walk through the handicap area potentially to the bus stop itself. There's also an exit point at the bottom of each stairwell, so people can just leave the building at that section as well. So we will quickly copy and paste things around, try and decorate it as much as possible. We're even going to add a little bit of a flower bed in the middle here just to help divide up this large open space. I was going to put parking spaces there, but they just felt a little too tight, a little too congested, and it wasn't really going to work off itself too well. And just having some people just park kind of right there in the entryway, I think would just make that look a little too busy. And then we're gonna make a nice custom kind of welcome sign for parking. And it's tough to find signs at the right size and the right kind of texture that we need. And looks like there's some sirens here late at night. And we have just a nice simple shape. And it's going to be backed and kind of bolstered. These are signs that you might see at like technological parks or business parks, you know, things saying what it is. We'll also give it some lights, kind of color the box itself to match the sandstone look. And we'll just tell it, for now, parking. I haven't come up with any definitive names for each parking zone or anything like that, so that's just for kind of future reference. More kind of line work, we'll decorate the interior kind of garden area. Just throw in a bunch of random kind of bushes and trees and just kind of fill that in nicely. So there's plenty of detail to go around on the flat areas as well. I do want to end up adding some forested areas, some more rocks and things to make the building look really grounded. But for now, we'll just add some cars to the parking spots. These are the early placement of cars. As we go through each week into the live stream and expand our car fleet, I think it's going to increase the variety and definitely help out with the overall composition. So what we're going to do is go ahead and finish up the speed build section here, and we'll kick it over to real time. You guys will be able to see how things are going and give me some wonderful feedback that I use to hopefully improve the overall process, and hope you enjoy it. Okay, so here we are at the current first parking garage, at least the first iteration. There's going to be probably many passes that I'll go through, adding little details and little Easter eggs potentially just to help fill out the area in the long run, but this is definitely well enough to where I feel like I can move on to the next parking spot, if not to the rest. I do want to try and get maybe the next 2 buildings complete in one episode and their large parking grid. And then at that point, filling in the additional kind of just blank spaces are going to be relatively quick. And then we'll just add some trees and shrubbery. And then we can move on to, say, the bus stations. The bus stations are going to be the final piece. Some finishing road touches going through there. And once that is complete, we'll start actually working on the park proper. I know a lot of people want me to start working on the park sooner rather than later, but I need to have this area established so I know how the park's going to interact with it in the long run. So compositionally, we can't move on to the entrance until this is done in my mind. Otherwise, you might get 2 things that would probably clash side by side. So here is the parking garage. It is a nice 3-story with a 4-story being the open roof parking. We get plenty of handicap spaces out here. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 handicap spots in total so far. There'll be more on this parking lot and still even more on each other parking lot. We get that low kind of retaining wall holding in these garden elements, the gaps here, so people can get onto this main sidewalk space. That'll take them straight into the bus station. I am thinking about adding a bridge element here. Not because it makes sense, but because I think it'll just look cool. And the rule of cool is always kind of priority, at least for me. Some people definitely prefer realism. I just prefer believability with a side of, wow, that looks cool. We get some of our custom cars placed, which do look nice under these little awnings, giving them some shade. And, you know, from down below, seeing the awnings come up over the roof line adds some dynamic shapes to it. And because they are slightly angled, I think it does just add a little bit of flair to just what is a boxy building. There's no way to get around that when you are doing a car park, unless you do like a curved version, but either way, it's still a repetitive structure. So the top is essentially the same as every floor below, except for the first floor. You can see we have the ramps going up here, and then they simply go around the edge and potentially go back down if that's something they need to do. Plenty of parking spots up here. You can see the parking spots are wide enough to fit cars, and the little orange areas to make sure people don't double park or avoid this section so they don't hit the cars that are parked along the edge, and definitely give plenty of room. We have our elevator shaft and staircases. These are marked with the floor numbers as well. I did add little speakers here during the live stream just to give it some ambient music. I will be kind of deciding what music to choose later. So right now it's a little sci-fi and adventure-y. I added gears on the interior of the elevators as well. That kind of just makes a little bit of a background noise for the guests, even though there's no guests here really at all. Nice pedestrian walkways from this covered area straight across, so people, really watch out so they don't get hit by a vehicle. As you go down, the floor markers, of course, update to signal what floor you are on. Floor 3 is this one. And then down to floor 2, we have the arrows indicating up and down. There is plenty of width here to get cars up and down, which is very important. Here is the ground floor. This is the different one. It has some speed bumps in here just so you can kind of establish that 15-mile-an-hour speed a lot quicker. And the layout back here is a little bit different due to just the shape of the building and the first ramp up. It kind of changes how the first and top floor behaves from the rest. Other than that, guardrails, speed limit signs, we have some security cameras, and that is about it currently. So let's click on the building, and I want to show you some security camera footage just because it's still one of my favorite view points right now in the game. You can zoom in, you can really take in the detail from a very unique perspective here. So the front just has 2 cameras. We have this camera on a pole, which does a nice 360 spin, and then our other cameras at the top there, providing a nice overlook area. And when the park's back there in the background, this is going to be just one of my favorite viewpoints, probably. Other than that, we have some plans for the future. If you guys like the style of this, we can kind of easily use the same kind of method, flesh these out relatively quick, do kind of the same light parking lot area through there, and I think that'll just be successful. The bridge and sidewalk area, I'm thinking about putting some bike stands here and access points for that, because I did get that as a suggestion, and bikes I think would be a cool little thing. I can just put them under a little awning like these vehicles here. Other than that, I don't think there's much else to really cover. So I think we'll just leave it here, switch it to night, so you guys can see some of the lighting in action. It does look pretty cool, especially with that street sign down below. So if you guys are enjoying Alpine Odyssey, do leave a like. That is your guys' method to vote on how well I'm doing, also how well you like the content. Leave a comment down below on what you want to see built next, or ideas, suggestions, things to add, change. This is as much your guys' park as it is mine. Also, subscribe if you're new. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.